Hello and welcome to Berry Aftercare. Ooh, our series on healthy communication continues, but today I'm going to help you learn something you might not want to know about yourself. We're going to talk about passive communication. Now, when we started this series on communication, we talked about four of the major varieties of communication, right? There's assertive, which we're going for. There's passive, which isn't the healthiest, and we're going to touch on today in great detail. There's passive aggressive, and there's aggressive. So today we're going to do a deep dive into passive communication. And what I have learned is that a lot of people in the bariatric community, a lot of people who suffer from the disease of obesity, are very passive communicators, at least in some areas of their lives. And that's the truth for all of us. We don't have just one form of communication, but we have a primary form of communication, most of us. And for a lot of the people in the bariatric community who suffer with obesity, passive communication is causing some problems, and it will continue to cause problems in your life unless you work real hard on doing what we've been talking about in the past many videos, which is learning assertive communication, using I statements, sharing your thoughts, your feelings, your observations, instead of focusing on you. All right, so we want to avoid conflict. I know that about most people, but passive communication, while it may avoid conflict in the short term, may lead to an outburst later on. Let me tell you a story of a woman that I worked with this week in therapy. And she got on this session and she was initially really worked up, distressed, distraught. I'm like, well, what's going on? And she said, well, I just got off this conference call at work and I'm just really, really agitated about it. I'm like, well, do you want to talk about it? And she said, well, yeah, I do. She said, because what happened is, right before I got on this call with you, I found myself in the kitchen just looking around for something to eat. And I said, well, how are you feeling? She said, I was angry. I said, okay, so that makes sense given her pattern that when she was angry, she would try to find something to eat to calm down her emotions, emotional eating, using food to pacify her feelings rather than to express them. I said, well, what happened in the meeting? And she said, well, one of the people didn't stay in their lane. You know, they're supposed to talk about policy and whatever. And my role in this meeting was to talk about the science behind what the meeting was about. Well, he jumped over into my lane and I was really upset about it. And yet I didn't say anything about it. And when I tried to talk to his supervisor about it afterwards, you know, she came on kind of aggressively and I just shut down. I just shut down. I said, so in other words, you didn't say what you were thinking. She said, that's right. And I said, well, what were you thinking? She said, well, I was thinking, you know, I would appreciate if you would talk to the person under, you know, in your team and let them know that they were out of their lane. But you didn't say that. No, I didn't. She said, what I actually did do was apologize. She said, and then I was thinking, what am I apologizing for? So the long and the short of it is she was giving a great example of passive communication. In other words, she was thinking certain things, she was feeling certain things, but she kept them to herself rather than saying them. Now, she was not an equal managerial level as the woman who's the supervisor, and yet she didn't say what she thought. She kept it in, and as a result, she was angry. She was angry with herself. She was angry with the other supervisor. She was angry with the person who came into her lane in the meeting. And she kept it all to herself and went to food. So, this is a great example of how remaining passive with our communication can lead to internal anger, internal frustration, anger toward self, and running to food to feel better. That's a vicious cycle. And it's one of the things you want to look at and see, are you sabotaging yourself by using passive communication when speaking your mind would prevent you from getting angry about not having spoken your mind, which would prevent looking around in the kitchen for something to make you feel better. So that's a real life example of what happened this week and how passive communication is never going to get you to where you want to be. It's never going to lead you to feel the kind of self assertion, the kind of personal power you deserve to feel as an adult. So, we're going to talk about a couple of things. What is passive communication? And how do you know if you are a passive communicator? What are the consequences if you discover that you are a passive communicator? And how do you move from passive communication to what we're striving for, which is assertive communication? Assertive communication meaning I say what I think, I say how I feel, and I'm respectful of you in the process. We listen to one another, or at least I listen to you and I value what your opinions are because I am an assertive communicator. Okay, so passive communication is one of the communication styles that we've talked about. It can be verbal, it can be nonverbal. And passive communication, whether it's with your lowering your head or slouching your shoulders or folding your arms, indicating that you're angry, or if it's verbal, meaning you don't speak your mind, you don't say, this is what I think, this is how I feel, this is what I would appreciate. I'm not letting my opinion be known. It's a way of avoiding stating your truth. And when we do that, you defer to other people, even if it's to your detriment, which we heard in the example that I shared just a minute ago, because it was detrimental to my client not to speak up for herself because it led her right into the refrigerator looking for something to deal with her emotions. This is kind of comical. I don't know, and I hope you cannot hear my dog snoring. Darla, Darla. That's kind of funny. I'm going to share with her in an assertive way. Darla, I would appreciate if you would keep your snoring a little quieter while I'm doing videos. I don't think she cares if I'm passive or not. All right. So passive people defer to others. And then, unfortunately, a lot of times, this is a consequence. They feel badly about themselves, right? They're afraid that saying what they think might cause conflict. So, God forbid I cause any conflict. But who are you causing conflict with ultimately? With yourself. And then, are you punishing yourself out of your own sense of conflict that's stirring within you? That's not a win for you, right? So, we want to get away from that. We want to become that assertive communicator. How do you know if you're a passive communicator? Well, I bet you're able to tell it with other people. I bet you're able to spot it. And again, we have to learn to be aware of ourselves, to learn new things about ourselves. Because if we're willing to learn new things about ourselves, even if they're a little painful or we're like, oh, I don't want to be that, but we recognize that we are, guess what? We can learn and grow from that and become our better version of ourselves. And I promise you, everything we learn about ourselves and every way we can learn to improve how we interact in the world will help with our weight loss journey without a doubt. The better we feel about ourselves, the better our behavior toward ourselves will be. And that includes exercise, meal prepping, choosing healthy foods. Because if you choose the mantra for life, I choose health, that includes communication, that includes exercise, that includes what you put in your mouth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. How do you know if you're a passive communicator or if somebody else is? First, I want you to understand that this does not put you in the category of a bad person or a horrible person or a loser or a worthless person. Absolutely not. What it means is you learned this for a reason. We become who we become for reasons. And maybe you're a passive communicator because somewhere along the line you had an authority person, whether it was a teacher, a coach, a boss, a parent, a grandparent, who made it scary for you in some way to be yourself, right? So maybe you had an aggressive communicator as a parent or authority figure, and you decided that, you know what? Maybe they'll back off or I'll be out of their radar if I keep quiet. And that may have worked for you in the past. Or maybe if you spoke your mind as a child, you were backhanded. Well, yeah, I learned in a real hurry not to speak my mind too. And that worked for you in the past. But as an adult, what is going to work for us to become our best self, to get what we need in life, to get what we want in life, is to be able to say what we need and want, what we think and how we feel. So, even though you may have some fear or trepidation about doing so, learning to do so is going to be good for you in the long run, to include keeping your weight off. All right, so if you tend to avoid, and you know if you do this, and you may not know until after the fact, like my client who found herself looking for food because she realized she was angry. If you tend to avoid clearly expressing your views, your opinions, your thoughts, your feelings, what you want. Or if you find yourself kind of speaking really quiet, like, I'm sorry for how I feel, and, my thoughts don't really matter, and you can tell they don't matter because I'm not speaking up. Or if you're like, well, I'm sorry, but I would just, I was thinking that I might say, nobody's going to take you seriously, right? Then you may be a passive communicator. So if you avoid stating your beliefs just to avoid conflict or make other people happy, people pleaser, people pleaser, people pleaser, that's also a sign of passive communication. Again, doesn't make you a bad or weak person. It means you could probably learn skills that will work better for you as an adult. All right, now if you decide, I am a passive communicator, I keep my thoughts to myself. I keep my feelings to myself. I don't want to rub anybody the wrong way. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want them mad at me. I don't want, you know, but I end up unhappy about the way I acted, and I'm unhappy, and I feel victimized, and I feel like a doormat, and I don't want to be that anymore. So if you choose that's not who you want to be anymore, well, then you may need to acknowledge the need to put in some effort to improve this communication skills. You may need to express your own thoughts. You may need to say, this is what I need or what I want. And you can do that without inciting conflict or an argument by being a passive communicator, or by being an assertive communicator, which we've been talking about in previous weeks, by using I statements, by saying, I think, I feel, I would like. Now, body language can also give you some clues. So as you're listening and hopefully re-listening to some of these podcasts or videos, watch for how other people are communicating, because you can learn a lot from them. And if you're really brave and courageous, then you have some people in your life you really trust, like a best friend from forever ago, ask them their opinion about your communication style, so that you can choose if that's what you want to maintain, or if you want to put yourself out there a little bit and get out of your comfort zone, because we all know out of the comfort zone is where the magic happens, and learn and grow a little bit. All right, body language for a passive communicator. Slouching, right? Stand up or sit straight. Use some good posture. Hold your head up. Don't be looking at the floor like you value yourself less, right? Look people in the eye. Use good eye contact with others. If people ask your opinion, maybe you just shrug like, I don't know, or I don't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't matter. Because really, passive communication is basically giving other people the message that I don't matter. You do matter. But until you believe you matter, you may continue to engage in passive communication. And even if you're faking it till you make it, by God, you sit up, you put your shoulders back, you hold your head high. Not high like you're looking at the ceiling like you think you're better than other people, but you use good communication. You look people in the eye when you talk to them. You can use a soft tone that's not inciting any kind of aggression or conflict. All right. You can use a soft voice and still be assertive, because I can softly say, well, this is what I think. This is what I would like to see happen. My opinion about this is, I don't have to be aggressive or a bully about it, nor do I have to put my head down and go, well, maybe, gee, I want to come across like I believe in myself. So I don't have to sound apologetic. If people sound apologetic, then you can kind of see that they're a passive communicator. And I know this is going to sting a little bit when I say this, but passive communication indicates low self confidence and insecurity. This isn't me just saying this. This is researched. This is a body of knowledge that's come from data by researchers. That people who, it goes along with a lot of what we've been saying in previous videos. The one I talked about with the book by James Clear about habits. He says very clearly, your beliefs about yourself or how you identify yourself, your identification is in direct proportion, or your behavior exemplifies how you feel. So if you feel unimportant, if you feel you're not worthwhile, if you feel your opinions don't have value, then your behavior is going to reflect that. So if you don't feel like your opinion matters, if you don't feel like saying what you want or need is that important, your body language is kind of going to reflect that, and so is your tone of voice, and so is your lack of eye contact. Now, again, you just, you may have different communication styles at work or, in certain arenas. But if your overall style is passive, then it's an indicator to you and everybody else. This is not kept secret from others, that you don't feel too good about yourself. And if you're not going to take yourself seriously or um, show that you have worth, other people aren't either. And that's how you end up feeling like a doormat. So again, if you decide this is me and it's not who I want to be anymore, let's change that. We can show you some skills about how to do that. Because here's some of the consequences. If you do identify that you're a passive communicator, it's very likely that on the inside, you feel really powerless. We don't want to feel powerless in our adult lives. We want to feel like, you know what? I'm going to take control of my weight loss journey. So I'm going to change my language from the world's out to get me and it's too cold to exercise to I choose to do exercise indoors. Yeah, it's cold out. I'm making the choice here. It's a powerful way to take responsibility for yourself, right? Otherwise, we're going to be passive and go, oh, it's just too cold and nobody wants to go with me. And you're going to feel like a victim. You don't want to be a victim. It's not very, it's not very appealing to other people. Confidence is sexy, my friends. Confidence is something that attracts people to you. Confidence says, I want to be around this person. Passiveness says, oh, I want to be around that person because I know I can take advantage of them. And interestingly, people seem to like being around passive communicators initially because they really seem like good listeners, right? They're taking it all in, they're not saying anything. They come across as being really humble, but because they're not saying anything, they're not saying what's really going on in their mind. They appear to be really kind and caring. They're just not going to make waves. They're not going to, you know, say what they need or they want. They're not going to be selfish about anything. They're just going to go with the flow, laid back. But in the long run, what people are going to learn is you don't have an opinion about anything. You're not willing to speak your mind about anything. You're not willing to see yourself as important enough to even have an opinion. So if you don't value yourself, if you don't have confidence in yourself or respect yourself, the sad, sad, sad truth is other people aren't going to respect you. And I can speak from experience on this, but I was the one not respecting because the other person in the relationship wouldn't speak their mind. And I did what aggressive people do and took advantage, and they felt like a doormat. But when that person learned to value themselves and say, I have an opinion too, and started speaking up to me, sharing their thoughts and opinions with me, we're talking about my husband. Guess what happened? I could see that he was valuing himself. I could see that he had respect for himself. And I developed respect for him. And I quit taking advantage of him. And I was so much more attracted to him. It was a beautiful thing and remains a beautiful thing. All right. What else happens when you're a passive communicator is you become resentful. You become resentful, you become bitter, you become cynical, you become angry on the inside. And you're going to think it's because of other people, well, they're bossy or they're manipulative or they're this or they're that or they're not kind or they're not caring about what I think. But the truth is it's coming from yourself. You're resentful because you're not taking responsibility for yourself. As a healthy adult, your responsibility is to take responsibility for yourself. That sounded redundant, right? It's so much easier to direct your frustration to other people. Well, that boss is so this, and that person is so that, and we need to look in the mirror, point the finger at ourselves, and go, of course they're not respecting me. I'm not respecting myself. Of course they're taking advantage of me. I don't say what I'm really thinking. Of course they're not interested in my opinion. I never share my honest opinion. Right? That is not good. And when we're not thinking we're worthwhile of an opinion or respecting ourselves enough to be honest and say what we think, other people are going to treat us the exact same way. So, guess what happens sometimes with passive people? Eventually, they explode because they have all this pent up frustration and then they let loose. Now, what is that going to do to your relationships at work or at home? Or with yourself? You're going to become known as, watch out for that person at work. Your partner or your relationships with people at home are going to be like, oh boy, here she goes again. You're not going to take that seriously either because you're not consistent. You're inconsistent. So if you don't explode, the other option is imploding, and that's what happens to a lot of people. They implode. They take the anger out on themselves and then they eat. They take the anger out on themselves and then they eat or drink or shop or whatever to deal with those emotions that they don't want. But because this is Berry Aftercare and we're talking about weight loss surgery, we're going to focus on the self-abuse that results from having a passive communication style. Let me say that again. A consequence of being a chronic passive communicator is self-abuse with food. You're angry with yourself, you're resentful of others, and then you eat to deal with your feelings. You're abusing yourself further with food. You're abusing yourself by talking negatively about yourself. You're abusing yourself and neglecting yourself by not sharing your thoughts and feelings in the first place. And then you're taking it all out on yourself and you implode. And what do you do with those feelings? You eat at them. So a healthy adult is going to learn, no matter how hard it is, they're going to learn the skills. They're going to grab the courage. They're going to get help from somebody else. If they're not being able to do it on their own, they're going to learn, if I want to be a healthy person, and part of that is not abusing myself with food any longer. One of the things I may have to do is learn to be an assertive communicator and take those risks and get out of my comfort zone. All right. So, interestingly, a person who has passive communication skills, usually it indicates low self-esteem. And guess what happens when you always give in to other people's wants and needs and you ignore your own? Your self-esteem goes even lower. That's not what we want. You can develop anxiety, depression, physical health issues when the self-esteem is plummeting. Maybe you get anxious and then you eat to avoid, to calm your anxiety, or maybe you get depressed and you try to eat to avoid the depression. It's just such a vicious cycle, and it's self-abuse on self-abuse that leads to health, physical or mental problems in some cases, right? So when our style of communication is passive, most often people look at us as pushovers. They're like, "Psh, their opinions don't matter. They feel powerless. I'm not interested in what they have to say anyway because they never share anything." So when Dr. Phil says we train other people how to teach us, that's exactly what's happening. And we blame the other people. They're inconsiderate. They're selfish. They're a bully. That may be true. But in this case, we need to look at ourselves and go, I'm a pushover. I'm a doormat. I'm a passive communicator. And I can do something about that. And maybe you need to get help to do that. All right, here's some suggestions for moving from being a passive communicator to being an assertive communicator. Remember, passive communicators say, I don't matter, you matter. Passive communicators say, I lose, you win. Not good in any way, shape, or form. Assertive communicators say, I matter, you matter. I win, I want you to win. That's who we want to become. An assertive communicator speaks their mind, shares their thoughts, shares their opinions, shares their feelings without being aggressive about it. They share those things while respecting the other person. That's where we want to go. So here are some things you can do, but you got to be willing to do it. And you got to be willing to take the risks to do this. And you got to be willing to put forth the effort to do these things if you want to become a healthier communicator and have a healthier overall life and have a better shot of maintaining your weight loss. Remind yourself that you matter. Your thoughts, your feelings, the things you have an opinion about or observe have as much validity as every other person's on the planet. So nobody can make you believe that, but you've got to work on that on your own. So stay calm, breathe deeply, feel the fear, and do it anyway. And in this case, what that means, I'm anxious about saying what I think, but I'm going to look you in the eye and say, I think that's not a good idea. I feel scared when you talk about doing that. I would appreciate da da da. My opinion on this matter is, right, practice those nonverbal skills. Look at yourself in the mirror, in the eye. Practice eye contact with yourself. Then practice it with a friend. Then practice it with your kid. Then practice it with your sibling. Then practice it with somebody at work. Practice the eye contact. Use good posture. Had a woman at one of the retreats, and she was just an amazing human being and new in her professional career. And I'm like, listen, girlfriend, put those shoulders up and then lay them back and use that better posture when you walk into her professional arena. I said it will give you more credibility and you'll feel more confident. So many times I'd be like, shoulders up and back. So practice good posture. Practice having a confident voice. So when you practice with your friend and you're saying, well, this is kind of what I think. And she'll say, no, 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 no. Let's try that again. Here's my opinion on that. You can do this. All right. And then have a fake it till you make it mindset. This isn't going to be easy for anybody. You know, if you've been passive all your life and you've been afraid you're going to get smacked across the face if you have an opinion, well, it's going to be kind of hard to put your face out there and try it. But fake it till you make it. You're not in that environment anymore. You are in an adult environment, hopefully one that is safe. All right, stick up for yourself in communication situations. So you got to get out of that comfort zone. Be assertive with humility, not I'm right and you're wrong. Be assertive with tact. These are my thoughts. I understand if you have others, right? And be assertive with kindness. I'd like to hear what you think about that. So this is going to help other people realize that, you know, some kind of communication is not productive in conversations. So if somebody's coming at you from a really aggressive standpoint, if you maintain your calm and go, you know, I feel threatened when you speak to me that way, or I would like us to all take a deep breath and kind of calm down and restart this conversation. I would appreciate if we could all just take a minute out. And it helps teach other people healthy communication skills, and you can be the one teaching. All right. Practice the skills from the previous several podcasts on I statements. Look it up on Google. Start using I think, I feel, I would appreciate, it seems to me, I'm wondering if, I, which is not about selfishness. It's about owning my thoughts, my feelings, my behaviors, and share those things with confidence and respect. Now, you might need some professional help to overcome these things. I'll tell you a little bit story here. When I was new in my job as a therapist, very new, I worked across the hall from this woman who was probably 15 years older than I was, much more experienced. And I asked if I could do something at the treatment center. There was a guy, John Friel, who writes a lot of books that I really have learned a lot from. He was going to be in town and doing a workshop. So I asked if I could sit in on the workshop and just observe how he worked. She got really, really, really angry. I didn't know this. She called me into her office and I sat down and she reamed me, like aggressively reamed me for about 40 minutes. And I just sat there passively, right? I did not have self confidence in a lot of ways at my job for sure, because I was the new kid on the block. I just sat there and took it. And so I was discussing it in my own therapy session with my therapist. And she said, do not ever let anybody talk to you like that. And especially for that length of time. So I had to start. In some ways, I was an aggressive communicator. In some ways, I was a passive communicator. Neither one are healthy. Neither one are going to get me to a place where I feel respectful of myself and get respect from others. So I've had to work my entire life on this and still do, right? But if you need professional help, I went to my therapist, then do it. And if you need help improving your self-esteem because your self-esteem is in the toilet, well, then get the help you need, because assertive communication comes from having healthy self-worth. So if you're going to do it, it's got to come from the inside out. But you can work on faking it till you make it, right? So I'm going to give you a few examples, and then later in the second video for this week, and there will be an accompanying worksheet for that too, we'll practice converting a lot of several communication examples into examples of how to be healthy, confident, and assertive with your communication. And trust me when I say, my friends, you're not going to get good at this unless you practice, and you practice a lot. So if you've got friends in a support group, or if you've got friends that, perhaps you went through a retreat with, then I would encourage you to spend a lot of time together practicing these different practicing healthy, assertive communication and helping each other recognize when they are engaging in an unhealthy form of communication, either aggressive or passive aggressive, because we don't know our own selves like we think we do. Other people can see it, just like you can see things in other people that they don't know about themselves. So open yourself up to feedback from others and say, listen, I trust you. I want you to tell me if I sound passive, because I'm trying to work on being assertive. So could you be my communication buddy? You've got to practice these. All right, let me give you a few examples, then we'll wrap up. All right, let's say that you're somewhere and you're having these thoughts, all right? Man, her comments about what I'm eating are really bothering me, but I'm not going to say anything. Now, that's passive, right? I'm having feelings about this and it's upsetting me, but here's what you do instead. You remember that you matter. You're not powerless. You're in charge of you, by golly. So here's what you say. When you make comments about what I'm eating, I feel uncomfortable. I'd really rather talk about what's going on with our families, our jobs, or things that have nothing to do with what I'm eating. So here you've become assertive instead of being like, "Ugh, she's really bothering me." You say, when you talk about what I'm eating, I feel uncomfortable. This is what I would prefer. So you're stating your feelings and what you would like to happen. That was not ugly. That was not aggressive. That was not mean. You didn't say, "What's the matter with you? Why would you do something like that?" Right? Then we'll point the finger. That wouldn't be good. All right, here's a couple other examples. All right, so you're at work maybe, and there's a discussion going on about a project or whatever, and you're sitting there thinking, you know what, I'm just going to keep quiet. My contribution to this conversation isn't important anyway. You just put yourself down. You just said, I have low self confidence. What I have to say doesn't matter. Now, instead, you remind yourself that you're intelligent. You have good input. So you say, I'd like to add to the conversation that it might help solve the problem we're talking about if we consider. That's so beautiful. You're just saying, I'd like to add an opinion here. It might be helpful if you didn't say, we're going to do it this way, and this is how it's done, and this is the only way it's done. What's the matter with you guys? Can't you see this? Right? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's say you're at a family gathering. Oh, those are always ripe with emotion, right? So you're at the family gathering and you hear a group of relatives start talking about, oh, this bariatric surgery. It is just taking the easy way out. You roll your eyes in your head and you think, here we go again. And there's nothing I can do about it. That's not true. Instead, remember, you're the one who's had the surgery. You're the one that knows there's nothing easy about it. Now, you could get defensive and come across like a jerk, or you could remember, you know what? I matter. My opinion matters. So you kindly say, I know that you guys think having bariatric surgery is taking the easy way out. You are certainly entitled to your opinion. I'd like to add my thoughts based on my own experience to the conversation. And what I've learned is that having bariatric surgery is a decision that I made so that I could improve my health. And it's given me an opportunity to lose the weight I've struggled to lose for a long time. Now I'm working really hard to eat healthy and get exercise. I don't know about anybody else, and I can only speak for me, but I'm not finding this to be an easy process. So you didn't come across angry and put them in their place and be all snippy. You just shared your experience. Beautiful. So I hope you're learning that assertive communication is designed to help you avoid conflict, which is one of the things you're trying to do, maybe by being passive. But it's a healthier way. It keeps you from getting resentful, angry, feeling like a doormat, feeling powerless, to you being confident, feeling good about yourself, feeling like you're in charge, like you're responsible and accountable for your own choices and behaviors, not blaming others. And it's going to lead to much less emotional eating, punishing yourself with eating, or whatever it is you do that has an emotional aspect to your eating. I guarantee it. All right, take home messages. You have equal value as every other human being. Line up every one of the 7 billion people on the planet, and each one has equal value, which means that your thoughts, your feelings, what you want, what you need, what you observe are as important as everybody else's, equally valid. Number 2, take home. Nobody can make these changes for you. I hope that if you've recognized yourself as a passive communicator, you want to be more of a healthy adult and engage in assertive communication, and that you will take the steps to find out what you need to do to make that happen. And lastly, you've got to be willing to move outside of that comfort zone where you feel protected, but it's unhealthy. in order to grow. And make up your mind that you're worth doing the hard work. So I'm going to invite you, as always, to encourage people to listen to the podcast, to join Berry Aftercare. But I'm going to encourage you and invite you to be aware of your communication style. Work diligently on using I statements, sharing your thoughts, feelings, and observations, and being that assertive, healthy communicator. Because maintaining a healthy weight and being your best healthy adult really depend on it. Now, if you're a member of Berry Aftercare, make a commitment to complete the worksheet that'll be posted this week with examples of moving from passive statements to assertive statements. And remember, without practice, it's going to be real tough to do. So, as always, it's your responsibility this day and every day. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and in taking the time and effort to become your best self and maintain a healthy weight for your body for the rest of your life. Thanks again. See you later. Bye bye.